And then you want to have this probably like, I tell people like a fist.
Okay.
Between.
Does it lower?
Yeah. You might, Micah, this table's a little high. So you may have to just angle this down a little is what I have to do. Yeah.
Some phone books to sit on?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can just tilt it down towards your face. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. That's perfect. Look at that.
Great.
So what? Hey, good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, you too.
I mean, it's been a minute. You were in Nashville, I don't know, 6 months ago?
December, I saw you maybe?
Yeah. And now what brings you to town this time around?
One of the bands I've listened to the longest, Fish, is playing two nights in Huntsville.
You're a Fish guy.
I'm a Fish guy. Yep, it's out there now. So they are, growing up in North Alabama, we would always drive to Atlanta to see them in Nashville, drove to Memphis, would have to go everywhere. And so when they announced that their tour was starting with 2 nights in Huntsville at the new amphitheater, that's a really special place I've heard.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to go.
Fish is one of those bands, like, I could not tell you the first Fish song.
Mm-mm.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think of them kind of in the same vein as the Grateful Dead. Another band that I could not, I can name one, I think I could name one Grateful Dead song. What I don't understand it, though. Like, what is the appeal? I mean, I know people are fanatical about them. Like, what is the appeal? Why is that?
Well, I joke and say I'm a casual fan and that I've seen them 25 times.
Because hardcores are more than that?
Oh, yeah. My buddy Blair that is driving up today from Birmingham has seen them 130.
Oh, my gosh.
And we're kind of newbies, Like, we started seeing them in 96, and so you have the guys who go back to the 80s. For me, it was... I very vividly remember 1995. I was standing in Best Buy in Huntsville. I had $18 to my name from working at McDonald's or whatever, and I was holding in my hands the Korn CD and Fish Alive one.
Oh man!
And I was like, I can buy one of these, and my life is going to go one direction. I think I ended up buying Korn and not even buying Fish at the time. But because they are so musically. The piano in the band, and they're just all really kind of virtuosos at their own instruments, that putting them together, they knew from an early stage, kind of like the Dead, like, it's not about the recorded albums, it's about the performance and the presentation. And Fish continues to be a band that I find to be on the forefront of exploring new ways of kind of providing entertainment and also like monetizing that. They have a very small well to draw from. They don't have that many listeners, and they get them coming back all the time.
Yeah.
You buy a ticket, you get to download the show, and you're like, that was different than any time I've ever heard that song.
Wait a minute. Okay, so that comes with the ticket for every Fish show?
At least up until 2 years ago, it did. You get the ticket, and you can download the lossless audio for free from the show you went to.
Wow.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And it's like that, because that was that you were there, and like put your phone down. You don't have to record the thing. Like you'll get high quality from the boards.
And when was the first time you saw them?
I saw them in 96 or 97 in Alpharetta. And my friend Daniel's dad, Mark Witt of the Witt's Barbecue family.
Oh yeah.
Mark loaded up
I love Witt's Barbecue,
van.
Man.
And they drove us to Nashville. It was me and Daniel, probably a couple other people. Mark just parked in the parking lot, sat out there for 8 hours as we walk around looking at all these hippies, and then go to the show, and then come out. He'd been asleep, and he drives us home from Atlanta. So that was, I think it was 97. I think we were old enough to drive, but just not trusted to drive 4 hours to see Fish.
What is that? It's 25 years ago? 26 years
more
ago?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're averaging a show a year, really.
Yeah.
Golly.
And there were like 12 years I didn't listen to him a bit. Like after college, like in 2001, I put it down, didn't listen to him again until 2012. They came up to Massachusetts, and my buddies, Blair and Daniel that I mentioned, I just called them up. I was like, why don't you guys fly up and let's go see them? And so now it's kind of like our dudes hunting weekend,
funny.
Like you get together, see your friends, do a couple nights.
Are there any trips involved? Like, I mean, Fish is I've never done an illegal drug in my life, but I think of Fish, maybe incorrectly, but I think of them as like a band that people are like, oh, you got to go do shrooms, or is that wrong, or is that kind of the vibe?
I've never done shrooms or any illegal drugs at a Fish concert. So for me, it was always
at a Fish concert.
Right. Well, well, or anywhere, but in particular to Fish Show. But I think that there's a, that to me is, there are stereotypes and there's truth to a lot of stereotypes.
Yeah.
That's one reason I don't really like wear a fish shirt around, because I just don't want to get into discussion about like that thing.
They're like, you have a neat haircut, like that doesn't fit.
But what's funny is you see like the Grateful Dead have gone from like stickers on VW buses to like metallic medallions on Infinities as the cohort kind of ages up.
Oh yeah,
and then I don't think you have to do drugs to like Fish.
Yeah.
And they stopped doing drugs years ago, so the music has gotten a lot better as they've gotten more sober. So
fascinating.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, does it feel weird to talk about being the former Old Try guy?
I don't. We'll figure it out. It's the first time I've talked about it.
Well, how does that feel
tense.
to you? When I saw recently the stuff got boxed up, you sent it off. When was it?
Last weekend.
So it's still pretty fresh.
Yeah.
How does that feel so far?
Well, it's because even this last week we were shipping a print down that we'd done with for the Singing River Trail in North Alabama. So we kind of did our last custom print, shipped it down. So up until this weekend, we've still been kind of in operations for Old Try, and so I would say largely it hasn't really kind of settled in yet as to what it is because we're wrapping up things. But that said, we took a vacation, went up to Vermont for a few days last week, and it was the first time that we just didn't have to worry about customers or anything else. And so it was a little different coming home and not, and you know this because you run several businesses, to come home and not go, okay, well, we're now behind. How do we catch up?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, we're behind, but it's because we need to pack a house and move.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure that out. Because I can unplug. I can turn it all off for a week or 2 weeks, but it is tough because I don't have anybody I can send those people to. So we just like push pause for a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so that's been a little bit difficult, is trying to figure out how to play catch up. But was that a weird feeling? Just going.
I think it was a kind of new feeling. It's kind of remembering.
Because how long have you done that?
12 years.
I mean, that's a chunk of time, man.
Yeah, I've realized that I don't know what to do with my time because I haven't had it for so long and have fit Old Try into the margins, and that's just the way I know how to operate. So it has been a little different in just trying to figure out, well, what am I doing? Because it was always very clear.
Yeah.
I've got these 4 things I got to check off my to-do list, and now it's like my brother just retired from the Navy, and he was telling me about that. He's like, oh yeah, I can just go home on the weekends. No one tells me what to do. I don't have to check in with anyone. I get to decide what I get to do, and it's weird because I haven't done that in so long.
Yeah. When people would run into you before, like if you ever met somebody before when you were in that phase, that 12-year phase of Old Try, and they said, hey, Micah, what do you do? I mean, I feel like as men, we ask each other a lot, like, well, what do you do? How would you answer that question? Because you kind of always had a day job and then also this side thing that was probably more than just a side thing. How would you answer that question?
I would really practically, I'd say I'm a designer and I have an e-commerce business that I also run.
Yeah.
And so I have a day job and then run this thing out of the basement.
Yeah.
And I would just kind of do it that way. It's interesting because I've never, we made art, but I've never walked around going, well, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird thing because I'm working in advertising. It's all kind of commercial design for commerce. And so I'm like, well, I just solve problems visually, kind of strategically, conceptually, but I don't ever really think of myself as an artist.
Yeah.
And so I would never say that because it always felt weird.
Sure.
And then my wife's like, but you have art in a whole lot of people's houses.
That's true. That's absolutely true. But I get it. It could feel a little bit like, what's the word? Grandiose. I'm trying to think. That's not the right word, but like, I don't know. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
So 12 years you spent doing Old Try.
Yep.
Walk me through a little bit of like the origin story for that. How did the idea come to you? How would you even describe what Old Try is or was to your life?
Yeah. So, the kind of whatever subtitle that I have on it, or that is goods for home and away.
Yeah.
And the way it started was we'd been in Boston for 4 years, and I was wrestling with what it meant to be a Southerner and just thinking through that, because I, quite honestly, and you and I have talked about this some, I felt uncertain as to like where I was from or where I belonged, and I didn't have like a Southern family, and then there's all this baggage with Southern families. We're like, well, you how did your family get to be so prominent or whatever?
Sure.
So I wanted to get out of the South, moved to Boston, was there for 4 years, and just started reading a lot of Southern studies books, and by a lot, not a whole lot. The Boston Library doesn't have a huge Southern studies canon. But there were a number of authors like Willie Morris and Tom Wolfe and Curtis Wilkie, and these guys who all wrote about similar feelings of kind of displacement and a tug home. And so I was stewing in that some, and then the tornadoes of 2011 hit North Alabama, and so on the television, footage of home was on, and I was sitting by these people from New England. I was like, that's the church down the street from my house, and it's just destroyed. Yeah. And they didn't have a frame of reference for anything that I was experiencing. And at that point, I felt very disconnected from home, but also realizing like I haven't shared enough about what being a Southerner is, because I'm not really confident in it. And so I hadn't really processed that, with my peers that were around me either. And so Old Try was really just kind of a response to like, I don't know what I need to do, but I need to feel connected to home, and what can I do with the things that I know how to do where I am.
Yeah. Man, I love that. Would you say you've had a complicated relationship with the South? How would you describe it?
I don't know. I think it's one that has very much been in my head. Like in talking with my wife, as I've kind of, because I'm a pretty transparent person. I kind of wear my, feelings on my sleeve, and that's good or bad. It's people are like, stick to printing, and you're like, well,
I think it's good. Yeah.
But for my wife was like, oh man, some of the stuff that you talk about and you write about, like you've never really shared with me, and I find that there's a lot of it that's caught up inside as I'm kind of process this stuff, and so largely like I don't feel that I have that conflicted of a relationship with the South, but I think I've had to kind of go on this meandering route to figure it out and figure out what that looks like, and how to represent an area and a region and a people, and do that in a way that's hopefully been authentic and also honest, because I think there's a lot of like Robert Redford of the South at times, where it's just like all kind of glossed over, and I think there's everywhere there's messy stuff to deal with, but I think I've tried to process it and not go too overboard, but it's it's kind of my own story, and that's how I processed it.
Do you feel like your relationship with the region has evolved over the last 12 years? Has it changed at all?
I think that it's changed, because when you become known for something, you then become known for something, and then you have to kind of reckon with it more. It's easier to fly under the radar, and you're like, great, I don't have to kind of talk about it. I don't have to sit with it.
Sure.
And so I would say it has evolved, and it continues to evolve. And as we're moving to Chapel Hill at the end of the month, from 16 years in Boston, it's going to be kind of another homecoming to my wife's home, not necessarily mine, but I find myself remembering like you need to settle into that and like really appreciate it and learn, and understand it more while you're in it, rather than trying to do it from a distance.
Yeah. When did 12 years is a long time. How old are you?
I'm 42.
Yeah, so that's
prime years.
Was it, I remember we talked about it, I don't know how long ago it was, a year, 2 years ago. I knew you were kind of thinking about not doing that anymore for a variety of reasons, but when was it hard to even think about letting it go?
It wasn't at the point, I think it would have been harder, let's say 3 years ago. Yeah. I'd gotten to a point in the pandemic of, a lot of isolation. Boston was working from home and working from home for a long time. So, was in my basement the lion's share of 2.5 years and was able to do a lot of thinking and kind of processing. And a lot of that was a function of like having to slow down, like never having done that and given myself the runway with which to think, had kind of masked a lot of things. And so through kind of that isolation, I ended up having some mental health issues. I think a lot of people did, but just like,
I agree.
Again, just going like, what am I doing? I'm 40 years old. Everything that I've kind of wrapped my life around, which is like work and achievement, like that's kind of languishing here, and what's happening. And so, Old Try, I realized, had been kind of a mechanism through which I was able to process unprocessed kind of feelings of home and things that I kind of just hadn't really dealt with. And so when I realized that for myself, and I was like, oh, I've processed that stuff, and I'm in a better, not that I was in a bad place, but I'm just in a healthier place, and this art did what I needed it to do. It helped me unpack some of this stuff. And at that point, I was like, well, great. So what are we doing it for now? Other than just like, some extra income.
Yeah.
And do I have more, if this is a response to some not even hurt, but if this is a response to something, if that's where the inspiration's coming from, that's dried up, like what else do I have in me? I just realized like I'm kind of out of ideas because I don't need this anymore.
Man, that's fascinating. I mean, that whole period of time, especially early mid 2020, I just feel like it forced a ton of introspection and like, okay, what are we doing? I mean, I went through the same exact process, sitting on that front porch reading a book. I'm blanking on the name, The Ruthless Pursuit of Unhurried. Have you heard of this book?
I have.
Ruthless Pursuit of Hurry.
I think I read part of it.
The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is what it's called about, by a guy named John Mark Comer. But I read that book on this front porch in like maybe April, May of that year. You know, we're all being forced to stay at home.
So 2 months after it started, or a year after?
Yeah, okay. No, 2 months after it started, 2020. And
you were quick to process.
Well, it was. I mean, especially at the time, like a lot of our stuff. I mean, I'm sitting here. I'm just now processing this as you're asking. Our main business at the time was kind of event production. We produced our own events, and so those were being canceled left and right. And then our other businesses were we make products that predominantly are sold in retail spaces, and those boutiques and shops were being closed or forced to close. So we didn't have. I mean, our business largely dried up. I mean, it was pretty scary there for a minute, and it just I mean, it was that forced slowing down. Like we didn't have anything to do. And so there was this like, okay, well, let's just take a beat, chill. Like, thank the Lord. I mean, we could still feed our kids. We weren't, we weren't going to have to go live under a bridge. But to be able to sit on that front porch and just read and think about, okay, well, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And do I get joy from them? Do they feed my soul? Do I have fun doing them? Or am I working with people I enjoy being around? Like, there were a lot of questions that came up for me. And that's when we started thinking about like, I was like, I don't want to do events anymore. Like they stress me out. And I'm getting older, and like I already have 4 kids, and those are enough. Like those kids provide enough stress. That do I need this extra level measure of stress in my life? But I mean, I know for me, the reason I'm asking, like, you become kind of known for a thing, and right or wrong. There are things that you enjoy about being known for that thing, and there are things that you don't enjoy for being known for that thing. But some of the things that you do enjoy, like it becomes hard. It becomes part of your identity. Yeah. I think, especially as guys, we can maybe cling on to those identities maybe a little bit easier. And so it's like it was hard for me to think about not being known for an event or something like that, for starting to shed some of those things. That was really tough. And it just, I had to get to a place where I just had to be okay with it.
Yeah.
That the stress was just not worth it. But it doesn't sound like maybe stress was so much going on with this decision for you. I'm just curious, like, if that, did that take time to get okay with the idea of, like, not being the old track guy?
Yeah. Well, that's something that that I think I'm going to miss the most, is just that, whether it's a platform or access, that there are, because you do something that people, like you said, they know you for it, and then that's just who someone can reach out to. And I've made so many great relationships over 12 years, but I've also had those things. Like I was at home last month, flew home for a friend's dad's funeral, and some guy in a restaurant in Athens was like, "Hey, are you Micah from Old Try?"
Yeah,
and I was like, and the last time I was home in December, someone else did that, and I didn't know either one of them. And that's something that, it feels your own
good.
self-esteem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is like,
there's some pride involved in there. Probably not the good kind of pride, but like, yeah.
And to know that's, and I think that for me was the realization also that, like, okay, this is it's time to move on, because I didn't even feel that pang. I mean, there is that amount that I know that I'm going to miss, but it wasn't something that kept me in it to go, well, shoot, if I lose that opportunity, what will I have? I was kind of viewing it as like, this has been such a life-giving and beneficial thing. What other things could I be doing that this is just holding me back from?
Yeah,
and can I let this thing go somewhere else and either, go under and be happy with that, or find someone else who can give it wings and take it on, but then move on to the next thing after taking a little bit of time to just think through, okay, where am I now that's different than where I was 12 years ago, and what is there a place to bring goodness, to my community or to my region or whatever, and start something else. And so that's kind of exciting.
How did kind of the, I don't know what you call it, the new owners or the new, like, how did that deal come together? And, how do you feel about that? I'm curious, like, the first time, because at some point, and I wouldn't imagine they've already done it, maybe they have, but at some point you're going to see a new Old Try design that you didn't have any part in.
I know.
How's that going to feel?
For one, it'll probably
and
be
are you
awesome.
going to be like, man, that looks like crap, or like what? Just you won't be able to say that, but yeah.
Well, it's for me, I'm kind of waiting on that, because I'm excited about it. Like, what if we kind of created the word bank? It's like, cool. What sentence are they going to put together through that?
Yeah.
And you'd kind of asked about the process a little bit. So when I realized, like, okay, I need to move on from this.
Yeah.
Had initially reached out to some folks like yourself, and I was thinking, who are some people that do what they do really well? Because I think that Old Try was executed well. Not the top of its game, but everything was considered, and kind of done
for sure,
as best as we could out of our, house and basement. And so reached out to a few different companies. I thought it may make sense to, like, be, part of the product mix. And what I heard from you and everyone else, they were like, Old Try is you. Like, I can't separate the product from the person, the story, which was a helpful learning, because, like I said, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and moving forward, it's like, oh, well, I didn't realize that it was really just a kind of a therapy project for myself that happened to, net a few dollars along the way. But in the future, if we do something, like, how close do you keep that bundled with the person that makes it?
Yeah.
Or do you make something that can kind of live on its own?
Sure.
Like, these microphones we're recording in, I don't know if Shore was someone's last name, but doesn't matter.
Tom Shore is not out there like, oh, that's,
And so after having a few people pass on the amazing opportunity, you're going to be kicking yourself.
You can. If my wife were here, she would tell you. I was like, I want to do something. I'd like to do it, but
you had the 4 kids and 5 businesses,
and I'm trying to shed other things.
Yeah.
She's like, why would you take this on?
Now's not the time. And so I kind of just said, well, you know what? Let's just right size this, and let's move it to the back of our basement, and let's ship once a week, and let's just, like, make it fit a hobby and not a job.
Yeah.
And we had a customer, Kelly, who had been a customer since like the second week, and then you realize like people are watching what you're doing, and so
paying attention.
She reached out and was like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on here, but it looks like you guys are shutting down, and I hope you're not.
Yeah.
If you are, I'd love to talk to you about not shutting down and about buying the business." And that was, I mean, just really fortuitous, because I was at the point where I was like, you know what, let's just do because I was also thinking about like, how do you go out in style? And I was like, what if we did a 40-day sale, like a biblical sale, but we do it in reverse order? And so we just like start doing everything is $40 on day 40 and it's $39. And you're like, look, you could wait till day 40 and the print will be $1 if it's still around.
Be there, right?
Yeah, and just like sell it out and then donate all the blocks to the Ole Miss art department.
Yeah.
And then instead, someone was like, I'd be interested in taking it on. And so that it was just really organic, through an Instagram message, and then kind of a year process of discussing what that looks like, and how do you value a business, and what comes along with that. And so that was it changed hands officially July 1st. So 10 days ago. You're breaking the news story right here. So close 10 days ago, but that was like a year process. I was looking back in my journals where a year ago at this time, I was like, hey, we're having a discussion with Kelly and Jeff about if it's the right kind of fit.
Man. Yeah, those are, I don't know. I've gone through it twice here recently, because we shed our two main events that we would do every year that were pretty consistent. Well, I mean, one of them we're still involved a little bit. The other one we completely got rid of and turned over. But those conversations did you ever find yourself, I'm curious, like getting a little, maybe not outwardly defensive, but a little inwardly defensive? Like, because it's hard to sit and like, I think realistically value something that you've put your heart and soul in, but also kind of recognize that maybe just your season is over. Maybe this is the person who like they're supposed to be the next chapter of this thing, and you don't want to stand in the way of that. But I don't know. I found some of those just to be kind of weird to battle with internally, talking about those things.
Yeah. I guess I'm not smart enough to know what level of rigor should go with that, but it was kind of a, we'd reached out to a business broker that was like, back of napkin math tells me it'd be worth, 1x revenue or whatever, because you're kind of an owner operator. And so we got, kind of did some bad math that way and pulled some stuff together.
Redneck math.
Yeah. And then I was like, and then it was a discussion like, well, what would we feel good with? Yeah. And it was pretty organic, and it just felt like, you know what? I mean, maybe we could get more money, maybe we get less money. The fact that we're getting any money after 12 years is great, and that this will have life. And so it was less about that and more about like, really, I found, I was talking more about logistics and how like, well, how do we move this stuff, and what does that look like, and do you still use our same printer, and so it was.
Yeah, I would find myself in those conversations, like talking to my wife on the side, going, I mean, here's the reality of it. I am convinced. I mean, beyond like God, the Creator, coming down and going like, Chris, you're definitely not doing that. Beyond that, I was so confident that I'm not supposed to do these events anymore. And so, talking to people, and I'd come home to her and go, here's the reality is I'm ready to take all this stuff out in the backyard and set it on fire and walk away entirely, burn it all. And so the fact that you're getting, wait a minute, somebody wants to keep this stuff. They want to keep going, and they'll pay us for it. Like, I don't know. That was a huge blessing, I thought. Yeah. Just to get it. It was just but it was weird. I don't know. Just the idea of valuing something that you've put, that's intangible a little bit. I mean, you had more of a tangible, like goods and inventory and things like that. But I don't know. Just felt weird. Yeah. I had to drink a lot during that time. I'm just kidding.
When I largely quit drinking, so it was operating very clear-headed. But good for you for being able to approach that too and kind of learn from it.
What so over that 12 years, what do you feel like Old Tri taught you? Did you learn any lessons from that business?
I would say something that was a lesson, I guess, that I learned, or something I was able to put into practice and see how it bared fruit, was consistency.
Yeah.
I had, at one point in my career, worked for a couple years at a design shop in Boston called Toth Brand Imaging, and Mike Toth, the founder of it, was he created like the lifestyle catalog, like helped name J. Crew, because whoever inherited it down in New Orleans was like, I'm either gonna shut this thing down or make something of it. And Mike's whole thought was like, well, you just got to do something and keep hammering at it. And so Tommy Hilfiger, he helped kind of launch, and John Varvatos and Coach and all these brands that when you look at them, there's just this consistency, and you're like, hey, Coach isn't going to go do some, or as of yet, maybe they have, but you don't think they're going to do like a streetwear collab, bring in like this big time, like skateboard for creative director, because they're like, that's just not what we do. That's right for other brands. That's not right for us. And when you see a Tommy ad, that it's a Tommy ad, and the cast of characters, fortunately, has gotten more diverse over the years, but the clothing and the styling is this look. And so
timeless classic.
Yeah. And so for us, it was always, at least for, I'll say, 9 or 10 years, we strayed a little bit towards the end, but it was always like, how does this connect me to a place? Because we make goods for home and away, and if it's not a connection to place, even if it's a great idea, I'm not going to do it. So there was that thing that I always was able to run over and just go, well, let's just keep it clean, because then people know what we're known for, and there are things then that people go, that looks like Old Try. I know it's not, because it's not a connection to place kind of thing, but aesthetically it looks like it.
Were there ever brands that popped up that you're like, come on, guys, like, what, you trying to do me over here? What do you did you ever run into some of those?
Well, what's funny is that over, being around for 12 years, a drop in the bucket compared to like Hatch, but you have enough time to see brands come and go. And also the landscape kind of shift where, like, let's say the home tea company wasn't that big. And so at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of it out there. There wasn't a whole lot of like clean word art.
Yeah.
Now you find people taking, the Gather and the Live, Laugh, Love off their walls. And they're, on the curbs for free. And so I think that we saw a number of people kind of come in and go out that were trying to kind of latch onto an aesthetic.
Yeah.
But ultimately it was like, well, I think people that can create something that is truer to like whatever its roots are, and not just chasing a fad, sticks around.
You kind of calling out the home tea people too, right? I mean, because I would call those people out.
No, but they acquired a company. Who was it? Cardinal Cotton or somebody? Somebody who made some
Yawsome.
No, Yawsome. That's what it was.
Yeah. I think that deal. I don't think that deal worked out very well though. From what I understood. Do you know Craig at all?
I met him at like a Atlanta pop up and loved his shirts. They were so finely printed by Friendly Arctic here in Nashville.
Yeah.
Which is how we use them. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. I had no idea. Yeah. East Nashville, Friendly Arctic. Who do you work with over there?
Tom.
Yeah. That's so funny, dude.
Shout out, Tom. Get all your
Tom
shirts.
at Friendly Arctic. Yeah. Woo. I love him. And it might not even... have you ever met Tom?
I haven't, but we've used him for, 7 or 8 years.
I wondered a few years ago, like, do they just keep that email? Could it just be anybody on the other end?
It's like Tom from MySpace?
Yeah. It's like not even really Tom anymore. But
it's the default.
Yeah. But it's so funny. Friendly Arctic.
Yeah, we use them for the brewery in Mississippi now.
I love it. Tell me about that. I'm curious about, like, what's next?
Yeah.
You know what? Before we talk about that, I got a few, like, quick...
Okay.
I call this a lightning round. All right? I'm going to ask you just a few quick questions. Just give me kind of the first couple things that pop in your mind, all right?
Okay.
Do you have any family heirlooms that are just really important to you?
My wife's grandfather's 1948 North Carolina Letterman sweater.
Oh,
he was a manager for the football team.
Wow.
It's pretty dope. And I can still wear it. Fits
I was
me.
going to say, do you wear it?
Yeah. I mean, it's beefy. It's awesome.
19 what? 40?
It's either 1948, 1951, but it's
That's fantastic.
It's cool.
What's your favorite southern? I call it a southern curse word around here. I try not to curse around my kids, but like for me, it's son of a gun or dadgummit or something like that. What's your favorite southern curse word?
I like daggum in a text.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty strong.
Okay. In a text.
Yeah. I realize when I'll text it, people will be like,
That's pretty
It's
strong.
Yeah. They're like, you almost just dropped a GD on me. I'm like, no, it's daggum. It's fine.
Yeah, I do have one of my kids is a little bit more on the legalistic side.
Okay.
And they're like, that's a stand-in for GD. I'm like, come on. I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of a reach, but
Yeah.
do you have a preference when it comes to mayonnaise?
I don't.
You're not like a QP or a Duke's guy or a Blue Plate, or you're not.
No, and the weirdest thing, I had the same lunch every day for 15 years working at ad agencies. It would be a turkey sandwich with mayonnaise, cheese, cucumbers.
Yeah. Cucumbers?
Yeah, a little bit of crunch, a little fresh. But I didn't care what mayonnaise went on. So we've done a print with Dukes. We're moving back to like Land of Dukes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's mayonnaise. It's amazing.
Man, I just don't know about all that. I mean, you'd be fine with like Hellman's?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. When I say Southerner, like who are 2 to 3 people that pop into your mind instantly?
Gosh, I don't know why Reese Witherspoon.
Oh my gosh, she's
just popped in mind.
She's fake Southerner.
I know. Well, Jack White was gonna be another one.
Yeah,
I was like, he's from Michigan.
You can't put that label on either one of those people.
I don't know. Without having to think about it too much, I don't know. I feel like I'd be digging into my psyche.
Really? Oh
yeah.
Okay. All right. I think you're a man of faith.
Yeah.
I feel like you've become more vocal over the years. Do you ever find that it's hard to talk about that?
I don't.
We're done with the lightning round, by the way. You can
Okay.
give me a more detailed answer.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting that you view it as it seems like a more man of faith, and it may just be that it has manifested in the business more over the years.
Yeah, I think you've been more vocal with it through the old Tri voice.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Yeah, I became a believer in college, and always wanted to use business for good, and thought that the creator gives us, I didn't create the old Tri. I was inspired to make the old Tri, and just wanted to be a steward of it. And so we always gave money to charity through it, because I was like, that's just what I'm being given the opportunity to do. And so, so I've always kind of, had faith. It's I found that there, just with anybody's, walk or journey or whatever, there's times where you feel closer and times where you feel further away. But anyway, what was the question?
Well, do you find it hard to talk about that sometimes? Like,
Gotcha.
And here's what I'm asking. Like, I find myself in this world of, I don't know. I love them. I get to hang out with chefs or distillers, or and I think for whatever reason, most of the time, I run into a lot of opposition to the Christian faith. And so it's so although we're friends, like there's this thing in the back of my mind where like they seem to be adversarial to a large part of my life. And so it's I do find it hard sometimes to be open to talk about that kind of thing around certain people. And so I'm just curious, like, because I think you probably are in the same types of circles. Does it ever trip you up where you find it hard to talk about that?
For me, it's never really been hard to talk about. And we've lived in Boston for 16 years.
Yeah.
It's a very liberal place. It's very I'll use air quotes unchurched.
Yeah.
But I think that it's it also is filled with a lot of people trying to provide for their families and care for one another, and community looks a little bit different than it does here. But yeah, I've found that through living in New England, it's a place where people, similar to being in the South, where there's kind of just there's a film on top of the pond that is Christianity, and you're like, well, how deep does that go? Is it just like, oh, you're cultural? And there it's kind of being Catholic, and I found that, like, what, people will watch how you act and what you do, and that's the greatest way that you can share the gospel with them. And so for me, it was largely like, well, I'll just kind of live it out, and then if someone goes like, okay, what's the deal here? I want to talk about it. Very open to discussing it, but the kind of evangelical, like, go share my faith. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna live my life.
Yeah.
Try to do it in a way that I think is graceful and hopefully not very judgmental and is more in line with what I believe to be the teachings of Jesus. And if people are attracted to what comes out of that, then they'll inquire about it. Similar to how I came to faith. There were a couple of people on a trip that I was on. I'm like, I don't know what there is, but there's something different about them.
Winsome, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that, and it's whatever verse it says, there's the smell of that's not what it is.
Cheeseburgers.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Right. But there's just something there, and so I want to live that out where people just see my life, see my family, and they go like, well, what do they have that I don't have? Yeah. And it's
I think it's a great way to do it. I love that. All right, so let's talk about what's next for you.
Yep.
You're, Old Tri is moving on into its next chapter. You and your family are moving to North Carolina. Do you have a gig set up? Do you have a job lined up?
I am still working where I work now, but it's a fully remote ad agency, so it doesn't matter.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then, are you finding that there's a creative itch kind of developing that you feel the need to scratch, or?
Yeah, I don't know yet. Old Tri largely was a solution to a problem, and that's how I view what I make. In commercial art, it's like, what's your problem, and how can we help? How can I help solve it? And so I don't know what's next from a kind of creation standpoint. I want to get to Chapel Hill and just kind of simmer in the sauce a little bit, and figure out what would be good for people like us. Young family moving here that may not exist. Can we start something there? Can we find people that are thinking similarly and associate with them and figure out how to create something? But I don't know what that is there. But in the meantime, I am a partner in a brewery that's opening up in Oxford, Mississippi.
That's fun.
And it's a ton of fun. I went to college there, so it's a way to reconnect with a place that I hold dear. Yeah. It's beer, so like, hooray.
Yeah. It's so funny. I've never been a beer guy. And then playing golf with a guy maybe a month ago. And afterwards, it was a super hot day. And he goes, hey, let me buy you a beer. And I was like, okay. And I was his guest where we were playing. Okay. And I was like, man, I haven't had a beer in 15 years probably. Wow. And beer in my mind was just like Miller Lite, Bud Light, stuff like that. And so he bought each of us a Bearded Iris home style IPA, and we sat on this back patio, and I poured it in a glass like he did, cold glass. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, Micah. And I was like, this is a different thing. And now I don't know. It's got me thinking about that kind of thing. But
I heard that IPAs are the frappuccinos for middle-aged white men.
Are you not an IPA guy?
Oh no, I am. And that's the thing. You get it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing.
It was like great.
It's $8, but like I want another one of those.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the brewery.
Well, it's a really great group of guys that are all based in Oxford. They had reached out to me, knew me from Old Tri, knew the design work that I'd done on the Mississippi flag. And so they reached out and said, hey, we'd love help in branding this brewery and bringing it to life. And so I, quickly jumped on board. And so that was almost two years ago. Yeah. And so it's been a lot of, process of formulating the name and where, and also finding the location. And so we're in the process of building out the space. Should be open in like 6 weeks, but it's right. Part of the brewery is it was right on campus. The State Institute of Higher Learning had to do something to like carve out where it wasn't on campus anymore. But it's a perfect location halfway between the square and the circle that's in front of the Lyceum building. So the brewery's called Circle and Square. And just it's going to be a great place for people to get together. And similarly to like, hopefully, to the way that we ran Old Tri, finding ways to be a blessing in the community and to the community that it just happens to align with like, hey, we're a gathering place, and if we're a gathering place, we want to make sure that that's available to to all people, and find ways to do good there. So maybe I'll put the guys on the spot, but we're talking about doing like a charity 5K, Thanksgiving every year, and doing some events that become just parts of the Oxford tapestry that we can kind of spearhead, because why not?
Are there independent breweries in the Oxford area already?
None. Be the first one.
See, that's so funny to me, and I mean, you think about it, and it sort of makes sense just because it's a college town, and you would think like college kids lean towards just give me a cheap 18-pack of whatever. But then you have this whole level of alumni who come back and visit, or just people who want to go visit Oxford and eat and go to Square Books and hang out for the weekend. And I would think that would be super appealing. Like, to me, I go, how has no one already done this?
Yeah, part of it was the laws in the state. So microbreweries have only been allowed for, let's call it 2 years at this point.
Okay.
And so there may be 3 or 4 in the state.
Wow.
We're the first one in Oxford.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. Like, you're selling beer to college kids and to alumni who come to town.
Yeah.
And for me too, having Oxford has gotten this wonderful cachet. I mean, their PR department and everything has been working so hard over the last 20 years. And frequently when I fly down for games from Boston, I'll be in the airport, doing a switch over in Detroit, and there'll be a group of guys going down to Oxford for a football game. They read about the Grove, and they're like, we have no affiliation. We're Michigan State guys and Utah guys.
Yeah.
We're just headed down. And so also, the merch play for me is really exciting, because I want more Oxford-centric stuff that isn't just like, you go to Oxford and then you got to get an Ole Miss shirt. I'm like, those dudes went to Michigan State. They're not going to wear an Ole Miss shirt. Let's give them a cool bit of swag.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that's going to be a home run. And like, I'm just curious, and you don't have to get into all the details, but when you say you're a partner, did you opt for some ownership over getting paid for your services, or how did that work out? Because I think that's genius.
Yeah. It's for me, that's what it was. I'd done some work and said, hey, here's my fee, and you could pay the fee. And, but also, as a creator and a kind of a brand guy, I was like, look, if you cut me in, you won't just get like, I'm clocking in at 8 p.m. at night and getting my like leftovers from the my brain will just be on this.
About it.
Yeah,
right.
like thinking about beer names doesn't stop. I'm sitting here right now, sitting around going like, oh man, we could do something with your house and name it a beer, like One Eye Bear, because you're.
Hey, I'll give you that. Cut me. Get those guys. Cut me in too.
For listeners that don't know, Chris was just his dog lost an eye in a groundhog fight.
Yeah.
And sweet dog, and I'm like, well, the bear,
so
Faulkner short story, One-Eyed Bear, like,
that's
hey,
funny.
You could do a beer name there.
I took my 15-year-old to Oxford for the very first time in April
of this year.
Yeah, we went to the doomed Morgan Wallen concert. My son is a 15-year-old boy.
The second night.
Yeah, and so he is I don't know, he's fallen maybe a little bit out of love with Morgan Wallen since then, but leading up to it, he's like every other 15-year-old boy in Tennessee. Like, he wants to have his hair like Morgan Wallen, he wants to talk like he wants to do all that. So, and I'm trying to find ways to connect with him. Like I'm hanging out, and there's some songs I like, but it's like if I'm going to the radio, like I'm not gonna go pick Morgan Wallen if it's up to me.
You're gonna pick Fish.
Yeah, I'm not picking that either. But. So I was like, I surprised him. I said, hey, I got a couple tickets. We're going to drive down. And he was pretty stoked about it. And, yeah.
So what has happened after that? Have you gotten refunded?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we bought the tickets on a secondary site.
Okay.
Because it was sold out pretty quickly. But it was a weird experience.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, now we didn't show up. The openers, I think, started going on at 6, and everybody that you asked, security, they were like, hey, Morgan's gonna go on at 9. I mean, so everybody kind of knew like the run of schedule. And so we showed up, and they had 1, 2, 3, they probably had 4 opening acts. And so each one's, the first guy's on for 15 minutes, the next guy's on for 25, whatever. And they're swapping out stage every time. And so we get there like maybe 6:30. We missed the early guy. I had never been. Is it Vaught Hemingway?
That's right.
Okay, so I'd never been there. So we're navigating around, which was a daggum nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, just to get around that. Once you get in, like to get around to where your seat is.
It's just
the people were just. There were so many people, and I don't know exactly how many merch tents Morgan Wallen had set up, but dude, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And every merch tent we saw had 6 to 10 lines, that were getting in, and there would be 30 people in each line. I mean, it just didn't stop.
Yeah.
And they were just pounding T-shirts and hats and blankets. I mean, just everything. Every beer line was just packed. And so, I mean, they obviously opened the gates. I think they opened them at maybe 4:30. They're selling beer, they're selling chicken fingers, they're selling Morgan Wallen T-shirts, and then right at 9. I mean, and even that last opener came on, played the set. They took all of his stuff away, brought on Morgan's gear, the new drum kit, the new this, all that, and then 8:57 or whatever, they were like, "Hey, it's canceled," and we were just going. We're like, what?
The Jumbotron heard around the world.
Yeah, it was,
Twitter blew up with pictures from that.
Dude,
and I was like, oh,
it was pretty wild. And people, it was silent for maybe 3 seconds. I mean, it felt like 3 minutes, but it was maybe 3 seconds. Just people going letting it register a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the first redneck was like, "This is bullshit." I mean, just scream that, and people started throwing things, and I was like, "Hey, we probably need to get out. Let's just scoot on out."
Well, the good news is you experienced what it's like to be an Ole Miss fan, because you'll experience that at football games.
I mean,
weekly.
It was pretty crazy. And then, I mean, we didn't see any. I did see, kind of out of the corner of my eye, a guy was trying to arrange, dumping some T-shirts and stuff in a pile, and then later on, they were like, yeah, they were setting his stuff on fire out in the parking lot. And I was just like, oh, man, that's kind of wild. But
well, I hope your next experience is better than that one.
Yeah. I mean, it was
I'll get you an IPA.
Town. Yeah. Dude, hey, next time I'm there, when is it scheduled up? When do you think you'll be open?
A couple weeks in August, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just they're tiling walls. Electricity's supposed to come in next week.
In time for football season.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. We'll have beer in stadium as well.
Oh, that's fun.
So I gotta order cans real quick because we gotta can that up. But it's gonna be hopefully off to the races.
So are you doing more than just branding? Are you?
I guess so. I mean, as one of the, because there's 6 of us kind of involved, and so it's it's a lot of text and a lot of there's a really good model where you're like, well, I'll share my point of view on account. I'm not no accountant, but I can tell you how I ran my business, and then you can just take that and set that on fire in the parking lot if you don't want it. So there's a lot more that we all kind of chime in on, but we each kind of have our domains that we ultimately back off, and just navigating the state liquor laws that are very opaque, and they don't know yet a lot of things, and so daily it's we need to put ABV on the cans. Actually, we don't. No, actually, we do. Yeah, and it's okay.
I've never seen a beer can that doesn't have.
Yeah, we got to press print at some point.
Yeah. Man, that's fascinating. It'll be fun to see that kind of come to life and take shape over the next few months. Do you ever think about doing this full time on your own, being a designer, or would you a commercial art? However you describe it. Do you ever think about doing? I mean, I know you've done stuff for Witt's Barbecue. It's fantastic. Which, by the way, side note, have you ever had the chopped turkey at Witt's?
Yeah, got some in my freezer right now.
It's unbelievable. It's the unsung hero of Witt's Barbecue. People don't know about the chopped turkey, but it's incredible. But you've done stuff for Witt's Barbecue. You're doing this. I'm sure you've done other things, but do you ever think about just doing that on your own, having your own kind of agency?
Yeah, I have. So you can go to villager.design. Okay. That's kind of my studio, and I like the thought of doing it. I'm very risk averse, and so it's so I always battle with that, and that was part of Old Try was always well, I need to keep the day job going, even though we probably could have made Old Try big enough. It was I can't live in Boston and both of us be working on the side. There's too much stress there. Yeah. There's this perceived, security in working for, an entity and just going hey, I'm all fine. Whether or not they can pull the plug tomorrow too.
Right.
So I like the thought of it, but I've found that I'm kind of best in in the margins. That's always what Old Try was, and to have other things occupying my time and then having ideas kind of get refined and distilled and then coming out in their purest form, and then I've got 10 minutes to put them on paper.
Yeah.
That's how I work best. In the 8 months that I was kind of off between my last role and this one, I had unlimited time, and I just couldn't bring myself to make things because I work well with deadlines, but also just like really short pockets.
I love it. I love it all. I think you're a neat guy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And, I can't wait to see the brewery take shape. I can't wait to see what you do next. You'll come up with something. And if you do have any, if you got any ideas, if you want to do something together, I'd be open to that.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you touch, turns into gold.
That's not true.
So
That's absolutely
turns
not
into
true.
Some metal, some fine metal.
I mean, some of it's like rust, copper.
But you got to get through it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're all a work in process,
Yeah.
And what option do you have except just to keep going and trying? And I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the time. It's been fun to catch up, and I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Thanks for being friends.
Hey,
We
you're
met
welcome.
through Old Try.
Yeah, we did. That's right. All right. Thank you, Micah.
You got it.